Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, the author with no last name, and welcome to November. November is National Novel Writing Month, the time of the year where a lot of people try to write a 50,000 word first draft in a month. I am not one of them. And last year, around Nano, I did some videos about Nano, about how anybody can write a novel, and about how, what to do if you get stuck, when you're writing your first draft. So today I want to talk about the hierarchy of drafting, because I had read this article over the weekend by a kind of writing guideline, satire, just all around website for kind of writing stuff called Mythic Rants, and they did an article about point of view. And it was a very technical article. Even somebody who, like me, who has been writing for a very long time, my eyes were crossing and glazing over. And so I was like, this really should be like 3 articles. And I scrolled down to the bottom because I wanted to see the comments, if anybody had left any comments. And somebody had left a comment. And what they said was they were overwhelmed and paralyzed in indecision because there was just so much they have to keep in mind when they're writing. And I was just very saddened by this. There's nothing that frustrates and upsets me as, writers being frozen, paralyzed by indecision because they've been deluged and overwhelmed with writing guidelines, especially when they're on their first draft during Nano. And this at any time of year it really upsets me, but especially around Nano, it's just like you don't have time to be like frozen like this. So I did respond to her, and I explained to her that this is a third draft type of problem, getting your POV absolutely perfectly correct. That's something you can wait until later. Find out what's right for your story now, and do that. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to comment, and apparently Mythic Rant's blog uses WordPress, and because I have a WordPress account and I was using my WordPress email, it went and found my WordPress avatar bio, and I was like, oh wow, okay. And I had a question from somebody else underneath me about, the hierarchy of advice for drafting. So I'm going to try to keep this under 20 minutes. I have done this video once. It was 45 minutes. So it appears that we are going to be talking about drafting this month. But I'm going to try to make a summary of drafting, and then we can go over in detail each of the drafts, I guess. So, hierarchy of drafting. What type of advice or writing guidelines do you need to think about during each section of the manuscript story? Now, I am going to use 3 drafts as a general rule, okay? This may or may not be how you work. Maybe you write 1 draft and you edit as you go. I've seen that. Maybe you write 5 drafts. This is just in general, okay? Just to keep everybody kind of on the same page, and like if you were taking a writing class, this is kind of what they would teach you, how to, when you're drafting a story, and what type of journey your manuscript is going to go through. All right, so first draft. My little notes. The first draft is for you, okay? This is the time when you are telling the story the way you want to tell it, okay? And that means just get it out. What do you love about this story? What makes you excited about the story? What is important to you about the story? Why is it resonating with you? You know, what about the story makes you want to read it? Type of thing. Get that all out there on the page, okay? And it's your word vomit, basically. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, amazing. It just has to exist, okay? Do what you need to do to get it all down. If you need to make mood boards or have a music playlist or go work at the library or an internet cafe. Maybe you need to write a lore book. Maybe you need to create a map or make a cast list of actors for all your characters. Or maybe you need an outline or no outline at all, or whatever you need to do. Okay? So what type of advice are you looking for? If you are stuck on outlining, look for outline advice. There's lots of different ways to outline. You're gonna find it. If you are like, ugh, I'm stuck on this world building thing, maybe you need to go do some research on something historical that's similar to your world building, or maybe you need to do the 2 layers down rule, you got 2 layers under your city and you need to just explain 2 layers of that. Maybe that will help you. Maybe it's just, you haven't been inspired enough yet by it and you just need to scroll Tumblr until you see something that inspires you, or maybe you just need some ideas that will help you just keep going even though you're blocked. So the mint background for a document idea, or writing in Comic Sans idea, or using brackets ideas. That's the type of writing advice you're looking for. Things that will help you keep going. You can summarize in the first draft. You can do Daffy question and answer exchanges in the first draft. Have fun with it. Get it out. All it has to do is exist. Okay, so this is the first draft. Is for you, the way you want to tell your story, whatever makes you excited, the passion for your story, get that down on the page. Don't worry about it being perfect. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about having a consistent point of view. If you have to write your entire first draft in a notebook, my hand just throbs thinking about it, you do it, okay? That's fine. Maybe you're sketching little comic things at the same time. I don't know. But that's the type of advice you're looking for, is advice that keeps you going, that keeps you moving in writing, okay? So, and there's lots of different ways to outline out there. I use synopsis outlines. Other people like snowflake outlining, or, tangled web of yarn outlining, or bullet points, or, making fancy little systems, whatever works for you, okay? So, if you aren't going to share this story with anybody, or if you've been writing fanfic and been posting it chapter by chapter, most of the time, if you're not doing that, or if you are posting fanfic, the first draft is the only draft you're ever going to do. And that's okay. If you're not going to share it with anybody, bind it up into a notebook or something, put it up on Lulu and get yourself a copy, put it in a drawer, whatever. That's fine. Also, you finished a book. Dear God. Yay! Good job. You have done something that's really, really hard that a lot of people say they're going to do and never do. You have written a book. So, take that serotonin and dopamine that you get from finishing something and go and treat yourself with some more serotonin and dopamine. Like maybe you have a certain coffee that you really, really like. Go get yourself that type of coffee. Maybe you like a frappuccino or something. Or maybe you like gelato. Or maybe you want a pizza. I don't know. Treat yourself to something that gives you more serotonin and dopamine, because you have done something really hard. Good job. You have written a book. best thing to do is to put that book away for a couple of months and let your brain relax. Maybe you go work on a different story, or maybe you do some art projects. I don't know. Maybe, you go on vacation. But you need to put that story away for a while, because when you come back to a second draft, you need to come at it with fresh eyes. Like you've never kind of seen this story before. Who wrote this? I have no idea. Not me! I don't remember this. Did I write this? Man, it's a lot better than I thought it was. So your second draft is for readers, okay? Readers are not up there in your head with you while you're writing. They're not psychic. So your second draft is a development edit so that your readers will be able to understand your story and want to keep turning the pages of your story. You want the, oh my God, write more type of reviews on your, on your chapters. Now, those are kind of the least helpful reviews, but hey, I've gotten a lot of them in my life, and oh my God, write more. Sometimes it really does help. Gives you that little, oh, people do like my writing. Okay. So this is a development edit. This is the type of edit where you're moving stuff around, where you're making sure that you have a plot and not a sequence of scenes that are related to each other, that relay a series of events. That sounds flat, even as I say it. If you want to make sure you have a plot. You want to make sure that your story has structure to it. And, you want to know, where does the story start? When are your characters taking action in the story? Making sure that your characters aren't being boring. That is the cardinal sin. So you're developing your characters here, making sure that they're doing things that are important, that they have the skills to do things that, if they are good at something in the story comes up for them to show off their skill. And then sometimes you're going to be taking that skill away from them. Very important, Does your character have other characters to hang out with? That makes them a lot more interesting. If your character's an island, usually they're boring. Do your characters satisfyingly complete the goal of your premise? So when your characters have a goal and they're setting out to complete the goal because something bad's going to happen if they don't, and they overcome the obstacles in their way, your story automatically will have structure and tension. Okay, so do they complete the goal of the story in a satisfying way? And that means something has to change. Either the character has to change or the situation has to change. And depending on your premise, it might be for the better or it might be for the worse. So if you're writing a tragedy, it's gonna be for the worse type of thing. And that's okay. Sometimes you don't have to. Another thing you're gonna check is your show versus tell balance. If you're telling too much or if you're showing too much. So this is a lot of, am I giving them enough information that they can understand the story, but am I trusting them enough to withhold things so that they can interpret things, to add their own interpretation and spin to it? This sounds easy. No, it is not. It's not, telling is, the biggest thing is, don't give away your mystery, don't tell your mystery to your readers, because the readers are going on a journey with the character, and to you're like, oh, they need this information to understand what's going on, and you're like, but your characters don't understand what's going on, and your readers will learn when the characters learn. Trust your character, trust the journey of your characters to reveal that information over time, okay? Perfecting kidnappings and betrayals and love stories, and there's a lot of stuff in there that goes with the show versus tell, feelings and all that. And when you develop editing, this is the time also when you kind of settle on the point of view of the story. Like, do you have the right point of view? Or maybe you're in first person and you don't like it, and you don't like seeing I all the time. That can be obnoxious. So maybe you want to switch it to third person limited, and then you're worried that people won't remember that this is an unreliable narrator, like The Hobbit's an unreliable narrator. So but nailing down that point of view just in general, I'm doing first person, I'm doing third person limited, or I'm doing third person omni. Just getting that down to figuring out which one you want to do, that's a development edit draft stuff, okay? And description. Do you have enough description, or is everybody running around with blank face and blank room syndrome, or do you have too much description? Once again, it's a balance. So what type of advice are you looking for in a second draft? Well, obviously, character development stuff. Maybe you need to be, writing character vignettes, or maybe you need to be looking for character questionnaires or taking quizzes as your characters, whatever helps you. Structure advice can be useful, but if you have your characters, with a goal, and they're trying to achieve that goal and there's stuff in their way, and something bad's going to happen if they don't achieve it, you generally will have structure. And your tension, it will all fall into place. But if you're looking for structured advice, make sure it's for your genre. If you're writing a thriller, that structure is going to be different than a mystery, or different than a romance, But that's the type of advice. Yeah, structured advice. Pacing is so dependent on your project, so if you're looking for pacing advice, this might be the time you're looking for it. World building advice is here. If you're stuck trying to flesh out your world, this is a time to look for that type of advice. And show versus tell, and not in a way that you need to be doing this and you need to be doing that. Just advice to learn what the difference is. Why this is showing and this is telling. It's a lot easier to explain what telling is than it is to explain showing, to be honest. But you want to be able to go, oh, this is telling. This is why things are feeling flat and boring, and my reader doesn't want to keep turning the pages, type of thing. And at some point here, you might want to have, description advice or dialogue advice. You're developing your story, you're massaging it, you're moving things around, and you maybe rewriting parts of it. And so you're trying to make the story comprehensible to the reader. Okay? So once you have a second draft done, once you are satisfied with the way the story is going, maybe you've sent it out to a couple people and they've come back and they've had questions, and you can answer their questions, and you want the type of responsive, this is where you lose me when this is when I got bored type of thing. That's the type of, I have sent stuff out to my aunt, and she starts giving me grammar advice. I'm like, Auntie, I can always get anybody else to do grammar advice. I want you to read the story and tell me where you get lost in the story. Are you confused about the story? Things like that. So, are the characters flat for you? Do you find the characters relatable? You're going to be sending it out to somebody, and you're going to be getting the feedback back, and you might be working on it in the second draft or whatever, or maybe you're like, oh, this is a 2.5 draft, trying to work out the feedback. And you got to remember to keep your vision in mind versus what the reader wants when you're working with feedback. But the third draft is for agents and editors and your readers who love being editorial readers and are adoring grammar, okay? So this is your technical edit. This is grammar and spelling and your line edits. What is a line edit? A line edit is when you go through your book and you make sure everything is consistent. If you have countries or titles or names with different spellings, the Dawn princess when I started having Philippe. There was like 5 different ways to spell Philippe, and I had to be like, did I spell his name the same way every single time? Because Word's not going to tell me. Names and checking that you haven't used the same word, 100 times in the story. Do you have a very crappy story? Have you used the word crabby 500 times in your story? Well, you need to change up, if you see it 3 times on a page, maybe you need to change out the, go find a synonym for crabby. Man, maybe they're very grouchy. Why is your story so grouchy? And removing excess words, and going through and finding filter words, and that nasty verb to be. We know we love to be, but we hate to be at the same time. So, you need to restrict the use of to be as much as possible. And this is when you want that POV consistency edit. So you've by now chosen your voice, the point of view of your story. Now is the time that you go through and you really nail it down to make it consistent so you don't have a personality disorder, as the article said. And this is your action response edit, and making sure that you have done your paragraphs properly. New speaker, new paragraph, new subject, new paragraphs. So on a technical edit, what you're going to be looking for is grammar advice, spelling advice. You're going to be looking for filter word advice, because most people don't even know what filter words are. You're going to be looking for those advice about words that make things seem wishy-washy in your story. Well, that so sort of kind of seeming, there are lists of words out there that people have, but is another big one. And POV advice. And this is when you can start looking at advanced POV advice, other than this is the pronouns you use for point of view. So that's when you can start looking for that type of advice, like that article that I read that sparked this whole thing. That is advanced, and I mean super advanced, like third draft stuff. And then action response. What is action response? How do you do action response? And then paragraphs, and you can also go after more dialogue advice in a third draft. A third draft is you doing as much polishing as possible, because you want to share this with the world. Whether you're sending it to an agent who's going to send it to an editor, they don't want to, especially if you're a debut, they don't want to put a lot of work into your story. So they want to see that you can put the work into your story, because you're not going to get as many edits as you think you are. So they want to see that you can do that work. It's also if you're self-publishing, this is like your Windex in a newspaper thing, trying to get as many as spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes as possible. My editor gave me a list of like 6 things to watch out for, and I'm like, I always try to do that before I send it to her, that type of thing. And as you get on in your writing, you'll improve more. And so this is just the fine polish, fine tuning, last minute tweaks thing for you. Okay, so first draft is for you. Do whatever you want. Second draft is for your readers. It's now time to make your story comprehensible and make sure it has an actual plot, rather than being strung scenes. It's time to develop things. It's time to expand. Unless you're an overwriter, then it might be time to take things out. Make sure that things are in the right order, and when the reader needs to know them, showing, telling, and everything, and having everything balanced and open, telling enough that they get it, but leaving enough open for interpretation, And then your third draft is for an editor or an agent, or, to put it out into the world. And this is your technical draft, where you're going after your grammar, your spelling, having lots of the same words or consistencies, action and response, making sure things are clear, that your paragraphs are well set up, and things like that. That is the type of thing that you do in your third draft, because before then, it's kind of like a waste of time, honestly. All right. And then the very, very last thing you do before, if you're self-publishing, is your format. You don't want to format. You make sure your page trim size is right. If you're doing an ebook, you got to put in like your page breaks, and you got to put in all the like little table of contents with hyperlinks and everything. Formatting is the very, very last thing you do. If you're trying to make your book fancy looking, because, and believe me, I know Word is such a pain in the butt. Like, that's why so many people use Scrivener. But if you're trying to make your book look a little fancy, you want to leave the formatting to last, just so you don't mess up your book as much when you're going between drafts, type of thing. So, all right. So, first draft for you, second draft for the readers. Develop, expand, expound. Make sure I've solved the problems of future you. And then the third draft is your technical edit for your agent to, make sure people. It's a legibility issue, honestly. And then in the very last thing you do is format. Okay, and that is the hierarchy of drafts. So this month, I guess, is going to be dedicated to drafting. So we will go over a little bit more of each one this month. So next week, I guess we'll do first drafts. I do have some videos on the ChatGPT lawsuits that I do want to put up before it gets too old news. So there might be a couple videos each week. I don't like doing that. This month as well. And eventually I will change my background from spooky stuff, I promise. I like my spooky stuff. So take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Bless, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.